everyone, and welcome to the second episode of the Leaders Corner, hosted by me, Allison.
And me, Renee, from Leaders Fluent. This is where we delve into the world of business, leadership, and entrepreneurship.
Today, we're absolutely honored to be joined by Max Livingston, the founder of CourseLnk. Max, just to start off, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So my name is Max Livingston. I'm currently in second year university at the University of Western Ontario. And in the summer, I founded CourseLnk with one of my best friends, Seb Danson, which has been a really interesting experience. And I look forward to talking about it more in this conversation.
That's awesome. All right. So we were just wondering, we always think it's super interesting just to learn how people stumble across the world of entrepreneurship. It's not something you get into every day. So we were wondering how you came up with the idea for your startup.
For sure. So after first year, or during first year, I had obtained an internship at a marketing firm. And because of COVID, it was canceled and I was given a week notice, or essentially a week before it was supposed to start. I was told that it was essentially canceled. And so I was kind of bummed out, and I decided that I'd just use the summer to kind of read and for personal development. And kind of, I think it was July when my friend Seb reached out to me. And Seb is one of my really, really good friends from high school. He's currently studying computer science at McGill. And he was working on an app called UniPlan, which is essentially meant to be a practical kind of calendar reminder application that basically allows you to put in your assignments and to-dos, and it reminds you of when to do them or when you're supposed to do them, essentially. And he said to me, I'm working on this app. I think it's really, it's like something that I'm just doing as a summer project. And I was wondering if you could help me out. I'm reaching out to 3 or 4 of my friends and looking to get as much feedback as I can. And so I didn't really have anything to do. So I put a lot of effort into giving feedback. I kind of went through all the features, tested everything. And then also gave suggestions for things that I thought could be improved or new features that I thought he could add. And so he basically used the feedback. He thought it was really good. And about a week later, he reached out to me again and he said, Max, you were the only person that I reached out to who actually gave me any feedback. And you gave me really good feedback for this. Do you want to build something with me, like something more ambitious and something better? And I said, sure, yeah, 100%. That sounds awesome. I'm not really doing anything else. And Seb is like the perfect business partner to kind of go into something like this with. For the past 2 months, him and I had been sending each other books that we've been reading about entrepreneurship, literature, all that stuff. And so I was really excited to kind of get into something new with him. And so we had a 4-hour Zoom call, I think, either in early August or late July, where we basically just threw out all of our app ideas. It was like a throw up session almost, where we talked about every idea that we possibly could, every problem that we thought we could solve, all that. And we came up with the idea for CourseLnk, which is essentially a student-run social media platform with group chats for every class, faculty, and extracurricular at schools. And so right after conceptualizing kind of the very basic outline of it, we reached out to another guy called Vic, who is was a friend of Seb's at McGill, and had been working with small businesses designing their websites during COVID, helping them go online. And Vic was totally on board. He thought it was a great idea. So the 3 of us then spent the rest of the summer working on it together. And yeah, it's kind of taken off since then.
That is so cool. It seems that everything really fell into place and things were meant to be.
It's pretty funny because Seb and I have always been, like, in high school, we were really, really good friends. And it was kind of always, we bonded over kind of how hard we worked during high school to achieve like goals and whatnot. He was also really big into track as well, and he got me into that. And yeah, it's really fell in place. But it was definitely kind of a product of the pandemic. Like Seb had an internship as well that was canceled. And so both of us were just kind of had nothing to do and we're looking for something to do. And then, yeah, kind of came together.
Yeah, everything happens for a reason, I guess.
I suppose so.
Yeah. And you touched on this a little bit, but can you please tell us a little bit more about your startup and what type of services it provides? You can also
Sure.
talk about your mission and core values.
Yeah. So essentially, in the 4-hour kind of conceptualization meeting that Seb and I were having, we talked about a lot about kind of how difficult it, like basically everyone in university knows that every class has like a group chat where everyone, or at least not just one group chat, a bunch of group chats that people join to kind of meet other people in the class, but also to share notes and collaborate academically and whatnot. And Seb and I kind of saw how difficult the process was to find these group chats and make them. Like typically right now, the way to do it is you go into a big group chat, or not a group chat, like a community on Facebook with like 60,000 people, and say, hey, I'm in this class. Can anyone make a group chat? Or is there a group chat? Can I find one? And we kind of went through these, and there's so many that just aren't answered, that just kind of go into the void. And we thought that by making CourseLnk, which is essentially a social media platform with group chats for every single class, faculty, and extracurricular at kind of respective universities that we're at, we thought that we could make the university experience a bit more inclusive and kind of involve more people into kind of the group chat experience, which we think is now, in the age of social media, kind of a essential part of academic life at universities. And not only did we think that we could make it like more accessible to everyone, but we also thought we could make it better. One problem in these group chats is often that it's really difficult to find relevant information. So we came up with the idea for filters, which is essentially where you can, on our app, you can filter through chats for notes, exam-related content, assignment-related content, and all that stuff, which basically makes academic cooperation and collaboration a lot more easy than it would be on kind of group chats. And as of right now, we launched in January of this year, and we got 3,000 users from McGill and Western, which were the two schools that we launched at. And it was a fantastic experience to kind of have all these people that we didn't know and people that we did know reach out to us and say, hey, the first semester, especially with COVID, was really difficult for me. I wasn't able to kind of make friends or like kind of feel like I was a part of a community. This app is like, it's going to give me a chance kind of to like make friends in a way that I wouldn't before. And we thought that was really touching. And we thought that we could make CourseLnk a lot better than it is right now. And so what we did was we reached out, we got new people to join our team, a new marketing guy and 2 new developers. And our mission goal, our mission now is essentially to make CourseLnk into an online campus for the 30 biggest schools in Canada and 10 American schools in the fall. We plan on putting in a ton of new features that make student life more enjoyable, but also kind of adapt student life to fundamental changes that we see happening as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. So one thing that we're adding, actually that's coming out on Monday, I'm pretty sure, or it's supposed to come out on Monday, is a class calendar, in which every group chat has an accompanying calendar that users can basically access. And every user within the group chat can put in different deadlines and important dates and whatnot. So we think that's going to be an interesting feature. And then we have kind of ideas for all this other stuff, like a community blog and whatnot. We want to become an online campus, essentially.
That's really incredible. I know, like some of the stuff you were touching on, I was sitting here thinking like, wow, that solves all of the problems. I know for one, like as a first year, I've experienced all of that. Definitely trying to find group chats, like you said, ton of like a ton of people's requests go totally unfulfilled. And as well, it's really hard to keep track of all the different group chats between their platforms, like if it's on Microsoft Teams, Snapchat, Instagram, and they fill up so quickly. So it's really hard to find like quality group chats. And I think the filtering feature is super useful because it's always congested with people talking about other classes or other tests. So that's really, really helpful. And I know you said you guys are planning on expanding to more schools. So how do you plan on growing your business? And what is it like targeting it towards students?
So essentially, we plan to grow a business in kind of two ways. The first is, like I was talking before, about kind of just making it basically doing more with what we kind of have right now. Because kind of there are a lot of things, like I said, that we've realized we can probably do with our platform and good things that we can do. For instance, we think that the filter, being able to kind of find information more easily within chats can really help students with learning disabilities who otherwise would kind of have to go through kind of the school as an institution to find notes, which is often like a kind of bureaucratic and difficult process. So we think that could be really interesting. And we also just think that we can make the kind of group chat experience less anxiety inducing as it is than it currently is. And we feel as if this is not just kind of a problem that is this isn't just a COVID problem. We think that it's always, group chats are like huge things in online school and in regular school. It's always anxiety inducing to kind of go up to new people and ask them to like include you into a group chat, or to post on Facebook and try and get you into group chats. So we're really just trying to become as big as possible to kind of do more good, I guess. And the plan that we kind of have to expand to a lot more schools is actually, it's been in the works for about 2 months. We just we didn't hire, but we got a new guy on our team called Timur, who was our marketing guy. We met him in January, and he basically reached out to us and said, I think this is like amazing. I'd like to help you guys in any way I can. He had been working with small businesses before, helping them kind of adapt their marketing campaigns to the pandemic. And so he had a lot of experience, and he came in and he's been developing a really interesting kind of expansion plan that we're going to implement soon. And that involves kind of, that essentially involves like a huge program which has two components essentially. The first one is a free one. And for that purpose, we're reaching out to all the student organizations, clubs, and kind of anyone who has influence within universities, and getting them or telling them about our product, and essentially saying like, this is something that we think we could help with, we could help you with, and that would be good for you to basically to adopt for what you're doing. And in that respect, we're catering a lot to clubs because we think club group chats can be improved a lot as well. But yeah, so we're basically exhausting kind of all the free options. And then the second part is one that we've been working to attain funding for. We've been in talks with a couple of venture capitalists who have been willing to invest some money into our kind of company to help with advertising. We've actually been talking with an entrepreneur in particular called Chris Thierry, who's basically mentoring us right now, and kind of we're in the process of kind of looking at how much our marketing campaign is actually going to cost, and he thinks he can help with that. But we're also kind of in a variety of entrepreneurship competitions as well, like one called the McGill Cup, which has I believe a $20,000 kind of reward for the winner. And so we're looking to kind of raise funds in that sense to implement a marketing program that would include kind of an ambassador program where we get people at specific schools to get all their friends to join essentially, and we compensate them for every user that they attract to our platform. And then also we're just brainstorming different things like a referral code, for instance, so all users can kind of send their friends links to CourseLnk. And then once their friends come on, we'd get a notification that they referred them. So we're thinking about doing like a raffle or a competition for all our users. And the last thing that we're planning on doing is reaching out to social media student influencers and getting them to kind of endorse or advertise our product. The reason that we're doing this as opposed to like conventional Instagram or Facebook advertising is because typically we've looked at quite a few studies, and the conversion rates for influencers are a lot higher than they are for like placed Facebook and Instagram advertising. And it's also a bit more personal. Like most of the time when we reach out to influencers about endorsing us, they actually think it's like a really interesting product, and they often like want to help. Whereas it's kind of faceless to go with like to go to like Facebook and Instagram advertising. But that in essence, and then the campaign that we're kind of gonna spearhead in the fall involves expanding to the 30 biggest Canadian schools and a variety of American ones that we think we could kind of penetrate. So like UCLA, Michigan State, a bunch of really big ones there. But yeah, it's really exciting. And we're essentially going to grind this summer to kind of make it happen.
Wow. It seems like you got a pretty solid plan so far.
Yeah, I think so. We're working on it though. It's definitely in the works.
I'm so excited to hopefully use your platform one day when I go to university.
Sure.
I'm sure, yeah, many of our listeners too, probably. And speaking of schools and all that, I was wondering, how has your education at Western University supported your journey in entrepreneurship?
For sure. So I'm basically right now in a program at Western, I'm intending to do a dual degree with the Ivy Business School and the Faculty of International Relations at Western. So that's essentially a 5-year degree where for the first 2 years of study, you specialize solely in what you want to do, which for me is international relations. And then in the remainder, the 3 remaining years, you kind of do a combination of the two. And so I actually haven't really had that much of a business education thus far. I have been in arts. And I think even though people don't really talk about arts being applicable to the business world, I think it's definitely certainly helped me in ways that it's helped kind of the development of this business in really, really important ways. For instance, in first year, I took an English literature course, English Lit 12 or 1020, which I think it had a lot of people. But essentially what it did was it got me really into reading classical literature, which I think is super important for everyone looking to get into business, because what it does is it teaches you empathy. And there are actually a lot of scholarly studies about this too that illustrate kind of the effects of reading English literature, which is that it kind of makes you more empathetic and makes you able to imagine yourself in the shoes of other people more effectively, I guess. And so from that course, I really began reading kind of on my own time more. And I found that kind of in the summer when coming up with the ideas for CourseLnk and conceptualizing features like the filter one I said, and the calendar one that we're adding now, I think English literature and the empathy that it gave me really played an important role in kind of in doing that.
Mm-hmm. That's really interesting. I feel like that's not the typical advice you hear from like an entrepreneur on this type of question. That's very, very unique.
No, not at all. But yeah. Actually, both my parents are entrepreneurs as well. I'm very privileged in that sense, and both of them were English literature majors as well. Wow. And yeah, I think people underestimate the importance of the humanities and the arts a lot in business. I think that every business person should be well versed in the arts, and that's why I really like the program at Western, which allows you to kind of explore both of those avenues simultaneously, because you can get the practical knowledge with the business, but then you can also get knowledge that isn't necessarily practical, but knowledge that is kind of useful in other senses in personal development, I guess, through the other courses.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like in business, I've heard this talked about many times before, but it's so important to develop your soft skills, interacting with people. That's what business is all about. So if you're like a really great communicator and you learn how to be empathetic and communicate things very, very clearly, that's so important in my opinion.
Yeah, and I really think too that literature and good literature that has the capacity to really help develop kind of business ethics as well, because I think that's a really big problem in the business world right now, and not just now, but kind of in its history. And I think there's no better way to learn about kind of business integrity and being ethical in your operations than by reading people like Charles Dickens, who talk about the consequences of kind of corporate irresponsibility in the 19th century, and Joseph Conrad, who goes really in depth about corporate social responsibility in the Congo in the early 20th century. So I think it's something that's really important. There's actually, in my Business 2257 class, one of the cases that we were looking at involved basically a decision that a corporation had to make that would involve laying off 50 people, 50 of its workers. And throughout the entire 2-hour discussion that we had about it, not a single person mentioned kind of how the consequences of laying off these 50 people, how that, or they weren't, that wasn't even a consideration. It was all costs and kind of other stuff like that, productivity, efficiency. And I just think it's really important for everyone in business to kind of gain empathy and to be empathetic, and really take into perspective, or take other people's perspectives into account, in particularly when doing operational decisions.
Yeah, absolutely. Business, like, although it may seem like it's just about the money, obviously it's not. It's about people's livelihood and people's like well-being at stake. I think that's so important.
It's actually something that we've kind of, this mentality is actually something that we've used in CourseLnk a lot. Like one of the potential, when we first launched, we were thinking about sending emails to basically every single person at Western and McGill, telling them about our service, and that it was pretty easy. Like we had a bunch of computer science guys that could just like do their thing and get everyone's email addresses pretty easily. But we actually saw that violated it basically, we wouldn't get caught for it, and it would probably get us a lot of users, but it would have violated Canadian anti-spam laws, and we just saw it as kind of unethical behavior. So we actually didn't do that. We opted not to do it, even though it would have been, I guess, the efficient thing to do in getting people to our platform.
No, absolutely. That's definitely the respectable thing to do, even though you'd probably get away with it no problem. That's good. Like, it's really good to see that there's people running businesses who care about even like the little details like that when it comes to ethics and just being a good company at its core.
I think this relates a lot. I'm super privileged in the sense that my family is kind of really experienced in business. And my grandfather was actually a business theorist. He worked at the University of Toronto, and he was really important in developing kind of practical frameworks that companies could use to measure their social performance, and also to see how well they were kind of taking into account the perspectives of their stakeholders. So all those who had something to gain or lose from the operations of a business in their kind of operational decisions. And so I think that has really been super important, at least in influencing my decisions kind of with the business, and also just my aspirations to kind of get into entrepreneurship.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, and we were also wondering, how did you and your partners each contribute your skills and talents to collaborate and create your platform?
For sure. So I'm really lucky to have kind of had the team that I've had in developing CourseLnk. Seb is like a super hardworking guy who's really, really competent as a developer. And the other guy Vic, that we kind of got on really early in the process, is also super competent as well and really good at what he does. And so they were responsible for the development of the website and the app. Basically, what we all collaborated in kind of outlining what we thought the app should look like, what its features should be, which was actually a pretty arduous process. There are a lot of things that you have to take into consideration when coming up with actually how something is going to work. And so we kind of all did that together and I think that process took about 2 weeks. And then from then we diverged, and they coded everything. They were essentially responsible for making sure that everything works. And then I kind of took on the legal and business aspects of the development of CourseLnk. So I kind of did research to write our privacy policy, our terms of use. Also, I was responsible for pretty extensively testing it as well, and for all the kind of technicalities associated with incorporation, our first kind of initial marketing plan that we used when launching, and stuff like that. But yeah, these guys Vic was responsible for kind of how making the design, the UI, I guess, of making the site look nice. And Seb really did a lot of work in kind of coding the backbone. In fact, I think Seb did probably the most work out of everyone. He really came through. He developed the app that we have on the iPhone completely, and then also helped a lot with the functionalities of the website. So I'm super happy to kind of have this team. And then in addition to having the kind of those two great guys, in January, we actually, like I said before, we got 3 new guys. So we have Aritra, Abe, and Timur. And 2 of which, Aritra and Abe, are kind of responsible for furthering our app and furthering our product and making a user experience as good as possible. And Timur is essentially responsible for getting as many people on the platform as possible, because that essentially is the value that we provide. It's connecting students. And so our kind of biggest priority is getting students on first to begin with.
That's amazing. And also just creating an app or any technology from scratch is a lot of work. And I'm sure you've encountered a lot of challenges and obstacles. So I was wondering if you could share some of those obstacles that you faced while creating
Sure.
CourseLnk and how you overcame them.
Yeah, so essentially we started working on CourseLnk in the summer and then continued into the fall. And 2 of the 3 guys on the team actually got it, myself included, got COVID, and actually were incapable of working on CourseLnk at all for 2 weeks because of kind of the symptoms associated with the virus. And so that really kind of put us back, and we were kind of we weren't where we wanted to be in January when we launched. But we did it nonetheless because we thought that the product that we had was good enough, and it was good enough to kind of attract users and to provide value. And so I'd say kind of having COVID was probably the biggest kind of stunt in the process, just because it stopped us from working for like 2 weeks respectively.
That's definitely sounds like a very unexpected obstacle.
Yeah.
Not something you typically experience, I guess, as an entrepreneur in the typical environment. I'd say it's a very unique circumstance.
Yeah, very much with the times.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. And kind of going off of that, what skills have you developed during the process of founding and running CourseLnk?
So I'd say time management has been a really big one, just because everyone involved in the process has been full-time students, and kind of my eventual goal is to become a professor. So kind of school is kind of my first priority. And so, but nonetheless, there's still a lot of things to do with CourseLnk, like making business plans for kind of these entrepreneurship competitions, meeting, administrative stuff, legal stuff, business related stuff. And so kind of working on CourseLnk while being a full-time student has definitely forced me to become much more effective in delegating the amount of time that I can give to certain tasks. And actually for that, I've started using like daily planners and whatnot, and like a journal where you put down what stuff needs to get accomplished and then you cross it out later in the day. I think that's been really helpful.
And just to add on to that question, is there anything that you learned and would like to share about working with other like co-founders and working with a team and managing a team?
Yeah, for sure. So I'd say, and this was actually advice I got in the summer. I think it was from my dad, and it was that an entrepreneur doesn't really need to be very like super good at one thing. They just need to be kind of they just need to understand how things work in a lot of different things. And so it's generally good to have kind of one skill set that you can bring to a team, but then also an understanding of how other stuff work, so that you can kind of monitor how things are going and how other people are working. And I think that's kind of that kind of characterizes the CourseLnk team over the last 9 months. And that is that Seb and Vic came into it with super capable abilities in kind of developing, but they also had kind of general experiences with like user experience and legal stuff and business stuff. So we're all, and I could not code like to save my life. I know nothing about that, but nonetheless, I can understand like whether something works as it's supposed to. And so in that sense, we were kind of really dynamic in cooperating in all this different, in kind of different areas of the development of CourseLnk. And even now, like all of us, whenever we do something, like whenever there's a new kind of thing that we undertake, like a new launch or anything like that, all of us take on the role of marketers. All of us kind of come into and step up into the kind of the role that's needed. And so in that sense, it's very dynamic.
Yeah, I think it's really important to try and become a very multidisciplinary individual, regardless of what position you are in a business or organization. And speaking of which, how do you manage your time between being a founder and a student at the same time? And can you walk us through a day of your life?
Sure. So it's been a lot working on CourseLnk kind of full time and then also being a student. But I'm kind of lucky in the sense that Seb, my friend that I founded this with, has really kind of taken on the role as the leader of the group. And so essentially, he has been really good at kind of telling me when I need to get stuff done and kind of when I need to get stuff done and what needs to get done. And so essentially, I think he'll reach out to me. He'll say, "Hey, can you do this?" And then I'll kind of fit it into my schedule and then do it. So I guess a day in the life would probably be waking up. Or do you want like a good day or a bad day? Should I do both? Because
Do both.
okay, yeah. So for a good day, which I actually had a few of in the past couple of months, would be to wake up at around 7:30 a.m. and then go on a run with my friend before anything else, and then come back, shower, probably work on CourseLnk related stuff for about an hour from like 9 a.m. to 10 or 10:30. And then I'd have all my classes and course related work would probably take me until 5 or 6 p.m. And then after that, I generally have either free time or I just catch up on lectures or something like that. So yeah, pretty bleak. But yeah, and then on the weekends, when I'm in my house with my housemates in London, we usually kind of just do stuff within ourselves, which are fun on kind of the weekends. And then I guess a bad day would be wake up at like 7:30 and then not feel like getting up for a run, and then going back to bed, waking up at probably like 9:30, having breakfast, doing my morning routine, and then working on like CourseLnk for about 30 minutes before classes start, and then basically doing my class thing and school related thing until 6 p.m. and then catching up on the work that I would have missed for CourseLnk afterwards.
Yeah, honestly, I think that's great. Like your transparency, first of all, that you're able to like show like not every day is going to be a good productive day. Well, not necessarily, but that it's like sometimes you won't have that motivation to want to do everything, but just like catching up after, that's really good. Yeah, and then moving on, are there any resources, for example, softwares or apps that you recommend for people aspiring to start their own entrepreneurship project?
Something that I actually wanted to touch on, just that you said earlier, was that basically it's really easy to watch all these like YouTube videos and see people waking up at like 4 a.m. and doing like living really regimented lives. and then kind of saying, oh, I'm going to replicate that and do that. But the thing is like, I've found in the past when I've done that, like when I did it in first year, it leads really quickly to like burning out and like not, and kind of periods of real unproductivity. And so I guess the key to success in that regard is just kind of taking bad days as they come and kind of just getting what you can done within them, and not kind of taking it as not really getting fed up with like not achieving your goals or anything like that, because there always is tomorrow and the day after that to kind of rework your routine and kind of get back into the gist of things. But as far as technologies and softwares go, I guess a Zoom membership is pretty much really important now for anyone trying to start their own business. It took us a long time at CourseLnk to upgrade to a premium Zoom membership. So for a long time, we'd have like 30-minute meetings or 40-minute meetings, and then you'd have to like end the meeting and start it again. So yeah, I definitely recommend having Zoom. And then we haven't really used, other than like to code, we haven't really used anything for productivity or time management. But I do know, and potentially in the future, we will implement something called Lettuce Meet, which is essentially, I think it's really great for teams. And it's essentially a website where you can kind of log in and then map out when you're available to meet over like a period of time. And so it's really good. Like you can send it to your group chat or your team group chat and say, hey, when can everyone meet? And then this is when I can meet, and they can all put it in together. It makes it a lot easier to, I guess, find time to work.
Yeah, that sounds like a really great idea. I've seen similar stuff that's been used in like my clubs, extracurriculars, group projects. It sounds very helpful. And just touching on what you said before, it's definitely really hard to like expect yourself to be perfect every day, wake up early, be productive. But I think it's just about striving to do your best. So even if you're not feeling like up to doing an entire day's worth of productive things, like just do what you can, and make up for it whenever possible, I guess. Like I've definitely tried the wake up super early, work out, make a super healthy breakfast, and it's just not sustainable for most people. I know I value my sleep and stuff. I really agree with what you said.
Yeah, I think the other thing too about that is it's really when you kind of commit to being regimented like that, it's really discouraging when you have days that don't go as you plan. And so from then on, it's kind of easy to get into these ruts where you're just not motivated to do anything. And I think kind of in tune with that is kind of particularly for people like our age who are going into kind of business schools and studying really really difficult things. It's really easy to kind of see your days or see time differently, where it's like, I have to be doing something productive, and if I'm not doing something productive, then I'm doing something wrong. But I think people should really place value on doing like unproductive stuff just to wind down. Like I know meditation is great, reading is good, watching movies, hanging out with friends, all that stuff, even though it might seem unproductive, can really pay dividends and kind of keeping you motivated and healthy and happy.
Yeah, absolutely. And with school, like mental health is such a prominent issue these days.
Yeah.
I think it's really important to take time for yourself to reset and recharge, just like after the end of a long day, just to get ready for whatever's coming next.
Yeah, I definitely think so. Because COVID-19 has been difficult for everyone. I like even me in second year, after having like made a lot of friends in first year and having those kind of connections going into the year, I can definitely see how it's made kind of the university experience a lot more isolating and a lot more atomized at that as well. And I guess that's part of the problem that we're trying to solve with CourseLnk, is just kind of trying to fulfill that need for connection that has been exacerbated in the pandemic, but is also kind of really important at other times as well. And I guess the pandemic has kind of brought to light all these kind of social issues and kind of particularly those with mental health. Like there are new studies coming out practically every day about the pandemic's effects on mental health and kind of student mental health at that. But I think that makes it easy to forget that kind of in the years prior to the pandemic, a lot of universities were talking about having mental health crises. Like students, being a student has always been hard and will always be hard. And so you really just have to kind of use all the resources that you can to stay mentally healthy and to connect with others.
Are there any resources that you would recommend for mental health and well-being?
Sure. Well, I think at every school, every university will provide complimentary mental health, like therapy sessions and whatnot, to all of its students. But I also think not necessarily resources that I could. I don't really have experience with mental health resources, but something that I can say that's kind of worked for me has been kind of getting into meditation every morning. Just 20 minutes of not thinking about anything is kind of a really good way to de-stress. And then also in line with what I was talking about earlier is just that idea of doing unpractical stuff and doing stuff that feels like doesn't necessarily feel like you're wasting your time with, but just stuff that you enjoy doing. And for me, I like to read a lot. So that's kind of what I do to kind of tune down. But yeah, I think if anyone is having kind of mental health problems, I think maybe the most important thing to do is to reach out to other people, because people are good and people will help. And I definitely say that's the most important thing.
Yes, I definitely agree. And thank you so much for sharing. And you did mention that you've started using a planner and a journal and meditating and all that. So are there any other pieces of advice that you would like to share for students who want to eventually start their own business?
With CourseLnk, something that I've learned and come to appreciate is how great it is to have really good teammates, like really well-meaning and kind of motivated people working with you. So I guess the best advice that I could give is just find people that you know are motivated and driven and kind of good at what they do, and work on something with them. But I guess something else that I think could probably be good and that I do every day is I end the day by reading. So when I get into bed, I probably spend around an hour every night reading. I mean, you can read anything you want. I personally read classic literature, but I think like self-help books are good. Anything related to passions that you kind of have. So I guess if you want to be an entrepreneur, perhaps that's reading biographies of successful CEOs or kind of business books or anything like that. But I really do think reading is super important, not just because it teaches you new things, but also because it kind of gets you into a mentality that I think is really important, which is one that is it kind of allows you to focus a lot better. And I think that's particularly important in a time like right now when everything that you're doing is online. And when the temptation to kind of go on social media platforms like Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and whatnot is really heightened, I think that reading it just puts you in a state of mind, a state of focus that allows you to kind of apply yourself in better ways when doing like school assignments and whatnot. So I think definitely reading, meditation, planning your days are definitely things that I do every day and I think have helped me a lot. I think could probably help any aspiring entrepreneurs.
Yeah, I feel like with school and ever since I entered high school and probably when I go to university, things are just going to get even busier. And I haven't really put reading as a priority, leisure reading. And I think that after hearing what you said, I'm definitely going to try and implement that into my days as well. Are there any written works or books that inspire or motivate you, or any that you'd just like to share with us?
Sure. There are a lot. I think, but to be perfectly honest, I think really people just have to find what speaks to them. Like there's, I mean, you can go online and you can read, like, you can listen to professors speak and whatnot, and they'll say, oh, you have to read these books in order to be like, in order to be cultured or whatnot. But I think so long as you're reading stuff that speaks to you and that's interesting to you, I think it's sufficient. But I guess some recommendations that I could give, they'd all be fiction. Anything by Dostoevsky. He's a Russian author from the 19th century. I think his books, in particular, Demons, Crime and Punishment, and The Brothers Karamazov, are fantastic works that really kind of go super in depth into what it means to be kind of human. Other books that are pretty good, Alexandre Dumas, The Count of Monte Cristo, I thought was really, really good. I enjoyed that one. And there are a bunch of short stories written by George Luis Borges, who's a 20th century Latin American author, that are really, really good and don't take a long time to read. Most of them are like 3 pages. But it kind of in line with mental health as well, a lot of these works really go in depth into kind of the human condition and what it means to kind of reconcile yourself to existence, I guess. And I guess that can be pretty helpful in kind of working through mental health as well, because it's just like, it's not necessarily that you're connecting with others directly, but you're kind of living through other experiences. I guess I've found that to be pretty helpful in kind of, and maybe just a good consequence of reading literature as well.
You said that you really enjoy classical literature. Are there any that you recommend?
So yeah, in line with what I said before, that would be like Dostoevsky. I love the Russians; they're fantastic. Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness. I think that's a really good work, not just for kind of anyone, but particularly people looking to go into business, because it really is a fantastic demonstration of what happens when you kind of take this mentality that is business, and it's that where you kind of separate yourself in business from kind of your normal moral sphere in order to go into and basically to ruthlessly pursue profit. And I think there's a lot that can be learned from that book. And I think it's also just fantastically written. So I think Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness is fantastic. I definitely recommend that. And then something that I actually just read that's a little bit more obscure is a work by an Austrian author called Stefan Zweig. It's called Chess Story. And it was written, Stefan Zweig was an exiled Jew from Austria. And essentially after the rise of Hitler, he went to Argentina. And this book is kind of a really short but interesting critique of fascism. And I thought it was fantastically written and really, really interesting.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing. And that's a wrap. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Leaderpreneurs. Again, a huge thank you to Max for joining us today. We really, really enjoyed talking to Max about what it's like running a business all as a university student.
And make sure to check out CourseLnk on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook at CourseLnk with no I.
And if you liked our conversation, be sure to check us out on YouTube for the video version of today's interview. And leave a like or a comment with any feedback or requests for topics.
If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe and leave a 5-star review. And be sure to stick around and connect with Leaders Fluent on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and stay tuned for the next episode.
And always remember, leaders are made, not born.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Hey, did you like this video? If so, click the subscribe button down below.
And make sure you click the notification bell to get updates each time we post. And remember, you can listen to the entire episode on 8 different platforms, including Spotify and Apple Podcasts.
Check out the links down below.
Bye.
Bye.